some people seem to care what my favorite product is in the Tesla line. And I have to say, it probably is Optimus because even the word Optimus, I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it's got optimism in it,
I
you
knew you were
know.
going to say that.
And so I call myself the Optimist Optimus, which I think I got it backwards, the Optimus Optimist. Yes, anyway, today Phil Beisel has now written a yet another sophisticated, deep, and thorough post with regard to the future of Optimus. And so, of course, we had to have him on, and he says he's even brought a couple of slides this time. So,
Yeah, dude.
Bill, what have you learned? What have you, as you've gone deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject matter, fill us up with your engineering take.
Sure. How about we go to the slide? Start first slide. So I put this in the article, but I really do love this line. Optimus marks the moment intelligent leaves the screen and enters the physical world at scale. You know, I mean, what's been happening is we've been starting to densify intelligence through these LLMs. You know, and we can call that true intelligence, or we can call that um, you know, compressed book learning at great scale. Whatever. In other words, we may not all see it as reasoning proper or human reasoning proper, but we definitely see it as uh, a very capable, you know, cogent type of product that brings a much denser intelligence to us than we could therefore had, you know, before an LM, right?
Yeah, and we always need to take into consideration that the way that intelligence is, what do you want to call it, quantified now, is not just the ability to understand something; it's the ability to deal with it at speed. So
Yeah.
so the extent that we've got this going, multiple times faster than a human brain, then we get super intelligence.
Yeah, in a sense that I mean that's a good observation because, you know, I think that we would always think, you know, those people we talk to that somehow have a photographic memory and can bring stuff to bear very quickly. You know, it's if it was just the photographic memory, if that was the end extent of it, then you might say, well, they're just, you know, savant and that,
Right.
you know, they're not necessarily, but having that data at their fingertips, it obviously is being interrelated in the very thought process they have. So then therefore they're exhibiting more maybe true intelligence through that. Um, I think what's interesting about this is if we don't count humans walking around as intelligent objects and maybe not some animals that display some stuff, there really is no uh, there is no intelligence from a machine point of view that has agency, and that's what Optimus is.
Mhm.
You know, it represents this is the time where we have like for 40 years or 50 years personal computers through smartphones we have thought about it as these objects as being giving us some level of a leg up on intelligence themselves. The LLM has started to, you know, really give us this idea of intelligent machines, but those things are always confined to screens. And while iPhone was a treasure because it created a mobility to the screen, it's still screen that we carry around. And Optimus really marks this moment in time, this like separation of history where now we can take this intelligent machine and give it agency, push it out there, you know, because it's embodied.
Yeah.
The intelligence is embodied and we can move it around. So anyway, there's a bunch of little notes on here, but I really wanted to read the quote that got this article going.
Hmm.
Elon was speaking at was a podcast with Peter. Peter,
Diamandis. Mhm.
yeah. The what's he call that? The
Is it?
podcast.
It's called Moonshots.
That's it.
Yep.
So moonshots. He said the following: You have three exponentials multiplied by each other. An exponential increase in the AI software capability, an exponential increase in the AI chip capability, and an exponential increase in the electromechanical dexterity.
Hmm.
The usefulness of the humanoid robot is those things multiplied by each other.
Yeah.
So what you're going to find in the rest of this discussion and in the article itself, and I think the article will do a much better job than the words out of my mouth, frankly. So I encourage people to read it. Um, is that I'm going to really talk about these three elements. I'm going to talk about the silicon, the intelligence, the machine itself. And I think those are the three things outside of the manufacturing moat that makes this thing super special.
Cool.
All right. So moving on, let's talk about the silicon. I think this is absolutely one of the most important aspects of this product is this custom silicon that Tesla is building. And this is why Elon has said, hey, guess what? I've spent my last, couple Saturdays, and he's talking about probably every Saturday since August, locked in a room with the chip design team, working on the AI5 chip, particularly, and the roadmap for this. This chip, we've talked about it. You and I on the show have talked about it in the past, but I think it's really, really important to understand what's going on here. And the way I would phrase it, it goes like this. When we had AI4, the chip that's in all the cars today since 2023, that chip was a gross approximation of the things that the AI team thought it needed. Okay, they're like, okay, here's what a neural net does. It's going to do a lot of matrix multiply operations. It's going to do these things. It's going to do those things. Let's build this chip to approximate what we think we're going to do with it. And I say that because even though, FSD in some ways was far along, it wasn't where it is today.
Yeah.
And we have reached a point where the Tesla AI team is very sophisticated in knowing specifically what it is attempting to do with the silicon.
Yeah.
So it is at this point that AI5 can develop a very, very direct solution to the AI problem at hand, and that coupling, that beautiful vertical integration, really can give this thing legs. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Because I think what happens here is you get this force multiplier. You get this multiplier, which Elon's basically saying. He's saying, you get a silicon that, as it's custom developed for a product like this, delivers the best intelligence per watt, right? Which leads to the best power profile, and it just keeps spinning from there as to why you want to do this.
So let me say it a different way. So in other words, you're getting more efficiency. You're getting it in a lighter weight situation using less electricity. Therefore, it is more efficient in all three ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think and there's probably more vectors to add to that,
Okay.
I mean, it's very, very, it's very focused on function. They know why they need it. They know what it needs to do. And frankly, FSD and Optimus, the AIs are very, 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 very tight. They're very similar. So it's not as if there's a bunch of discoveries, and there will be discoveries in Optimus. Believe me, there'll be things that they do. But remember, there's just no way to ever pin this down, right? In other words, if you got to the finish line with Optimus AI and then you decided let's make a chip, now you're just adding time. You can't do it that way. So you absolutely got to move the chip along, because that's what the product will require to manifest its so-called existence.
Yeah.
And so it's a difficult thing because you got to fix that chip in time. And this is the thing, a lot of people ask, why did it take till this week or next week, whatever it is, to tape it out and send it off to fabrication? And that's because Elon and the software team, frankly, kept asking the predicate question, like, what else do we need? What else could the silicon do for us that we're not putting here that would save? And he's thinking in his brain, potentially, this many watts of compute on this device, therefore giving it a longer battery time.
And then we are in this period of time where the changes that are taking place with regard, especially to this technology, are so crazy nobody can keep up. I mean, nobody can possibly keep up. So they're listening to the All In podcast and all these same things that we are, and they're like, oh my gosh, maybe we should call this guy because we didn't know that you could do that now.
Yeah.
And so at some point though, I think to your point, you have to say, okay, you got to stop in place.
Yeah.
This is it. We can't go any further with this one.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
You got to put a stake in the ground at some
Right.
point,
Right.
you know, and it's much better than the alternative. No stake in the ground,
Right.
or
Yes.
buying a general purpose inference chip
Right.
from a vendor that, you end up with a bunch of dark silicon and a bunch of features that have to implement it in software because the silicon doesn't do it. I mean,
Right.
there's a point in the article, and I talk about it in the slide and we've talked about it, where they've decided to take the softmax algorithm, which
Mhm.
is this little teeny thing, but it happens every inference cycle, which is happening 36 times a second in FSD, and will be happening at essentially the same rate on Optimus. And with AI5, they move that up to like 60 hertz or something.
Mhm.
And so that thing was implemented in a piece of C code and running on the CPU. And they moved it into the silicon and they sped it up by 40 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it means a lot, because it
Yeah.
means not only do you get that real-time pipeline, like okay, well, if I drop 40x off that little piece, that saved me a couple microseconds here. That kept my inference cycle at 36 times. I don't want to drop that rate. I don't want to drop it down to 24 or something. So super, super important to make those kind of observations, and potentially, while you've got that chip, in the design system,
Mhm.
you've got that opportunity to do it. And then quickly that'll shut down. And I guarantee the day after it tapes out, the software guys will be saying, but what if we could put, yeah, what if we could put this in it? Okay, that's AI6, folks.
Thanks. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just the way it goes.
Yep. Yep.
But this is an incredible thing here, and it really is one of the three tent poles that holds up this product and makes it special, and is a real exponential multiplier. So yeah. And
Yes.
just as an aside, we'll just put this as an aside, is that, to create this product at scale, Elon's talking about tens of millions, hundreds of millions of these products. Let's just say it's tens of millions, and we'll keep it clean. Um, what I mean is, we don't want to have to
Right.
overestimate it to be, a chicken in every pot type of thing. But we can say that, this product, I think, will have such high utility that it would be hard pressed to not want one. And I don't mean necessarily on an individual scale, although I do. I mean, like, businesses can't, afford not to have it.
Right.
If Walmart uses it for stocking, Home Depot needs to.
Right.
It's not really an option, because it's improving their cost structure.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so the people maybe get a hold of that idea really quickly, just because it's something I know a lot about, is that Walmart had a 4% advantage over all their competitors for 25 years because of their distribution center network that nobody else could duplicate. So this is kind of like SpaceX having their advantage of landing the rocket.
yeah,
So they had this 4% advantage for all those years. Well, what did that do for Walmart? Oh, it made them the largest retailer in the world.
yeah, yeah. And the very last slide, in the conclusion um, of my paper, ends with another Elon quote where he talks about it being the money glitch product. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, silicon's super important, and what I was going to say about it is, Elon has talked about, oh, I probably need to do this terafab. Guess what, folks? He really does need to do it,
Yeah.
because I suspect Optimus will take on one or two of these chips. People often say, well, why would it do two? It's not as safety critical as uh, as FSD running through an intersection. I'd say, yeah, during surgery it is. Um,
Yeah.
when it's carrying your baby down the stairs, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It needs to be a fault tolerant piece of machinery.
Yeah.
So I think it will take on two chips, much like FSD does, for that reason.
Yeah.
So anyway, the fab. I mean, it's if you combine Taiwan Semi, and you put Samsung in there, and you say that these guys are the two, and really the only two, that make complex chips like this
Mhm.
chip, or Apple's SoCs, or NVIDIA Blackwell, and so forth. Those kind of estimated number of chips per year is like 23 million
Between all of them.
between all of them at their current. So I did a little math on that, and it kind of means that Elon has to build a fab, because if he's looking at, say, 10, 20, there's a post in there where he liked that post where I said he hits this brick wall around 2029 where he can no longer get enough chips from these two vendors. And so he's got to move on that, because, and I also, some math I did on this is that pretty much to deliver 1 million chips a year, you need, with the current technology of these fab, you need about 2 million square feet
2 million square feet
per million.
per
So
million.
so double the number of square feet.
Wow.
So, and I mean, that's, I kind of checked that a few ways. It might be a bit wrong, but let's say it's roughly in the ballpark. Uh, that means that if you want to build 50 million, you need 100 million square feet of fabrication space. And to put that in perspective, the largest manufacturing building in the world is the Tesla a gigafactory in Texas at it's just over 10 million square feet. So that would be 10x the size to build the number of chips necessary to just build the product. And by the way, we didn't count the rest of the factory size for building the product.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not that much. See, I've done that math because I've built a couple of factories. So I did
Yeah.
math on that. And I think, they're talking about an 8 million square foot factory to build the Optimus. I think that's enough to do 100 million a year.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, all you have to
Uh,
do
it's
is all
it's
you have to do is take the volume. You're talking about
it's
the volume of the final product, right? So the volume is the combination of all the parts that are in it. Now you can try to decide how much warehouse space does it take to process, to have a just-in-time system that's processing that many, inches, square
yeah,
inches.
yeah, no, I mean, I
Yeah, yeah,
I I think I think your math is sound. I just say maybe I'm a little bit, because I was a little shocked at my fab numbers,
yeah, yeah.
to be honest with you. So yeah. Okay. So silicon is like one of those three aspects that really enables this, the intelligence. I mean, this is the AI of this product. And what's really, I mean, amazing is that this thing is essentially 100% AI. I mean, there's a couple components to it we can talk about, but realistically, this is a very, very large neural network. And in some sense, the larger the better. I'll explain that in a moment. And that's why you need this AI5, because uh, you want the neural network to actually be bigger, to have more layers, to have um, more parameters in the network. It encodes more. It encodes more of the knowledge of how the thing operates.
Mhm.
And what's really interesting about this breakthrough, it's a bit akin to, I think, how people look at LMs. At some level, when you think of an LM, you go, it's just it's just an incredibly good sentence completer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet it can write you something brilliant,
Yeah, yeah.
So now, why does it do that? Well, it has incredible high dimensional space, meaning it can interrelate the knowledge that's fed to it with these kind of vectors in a way that, you know, make your head spin. And if you look at the dimensionality of what's been encoded in that system, uh, and those very AI people who built these things are actually stunned themselves that
Yeah,
it does
yeah,
what it does,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Like, in other words, they built it, it does what they thought they wanted it to do, but it have it having because it does it, they look back at it and go, how's it doing it? Yet they know. So in other words, they're very impressed.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think we can see the same analogy here. Literally, like, kind of a transferable analogy of how will Optimus know how to, if you say, Optimus, bring me a glass of ice water.
Mhm.
And, that's a multi-step process. It's got to do a bunch of things. It's got to grab a cup out of the cupboard. Go to, it's got to get ice from the ice machine. It's got to fill it with water. It's got to carry it to you. It's got to understand that it's a glass filled with water. So you can't just it's not a bottle of water where you can just tip it indiscriminately. It's got to be held in a particular way, and then it's got to make its way to you because you said, "Bring me the glass of water." And all these things are kind of what when you ask it to do this, the first line of AI is going to be effectively an LM that's basically going to take what you said and build a plan.
Hmm.
And it basically the so-called language and intent side, which is in the little blue here, gets quickly translated into a planner, and 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 then the language is gone. Language is out of the picture. The so-called LM is in its box and it's done doing its task. The planner kind of orchestrates the whole thing. But the planner is interesting because the planner, being a piece of AI or sort of a piece of AI itself, is really constantly asking. Um, it's a goal setter, and it's basically saying, make the world look like this. In other words, for each of these steps, and it's inspecting that through the inference cycles to see if the world became the way it asked it through Optimus. And once it does that, it can move forward to the next step in the plan.
Hmm.
So okay, looks like you got the cup. You did that part.
Hmm.
Okay. Now that you got the cup, your next step is to get some ice.
Hmm.
And so it's saying, make the world look like this. What does that mean? The cup needs to get filled with ice. Okay. Next step. What has to happen? Got to put water in the cup. Make the world look like this. I'll just wait around until you get to the finish line of putting water in that cup, and so forth and so on. So the planner is a bit of the puppet master, and then you've got this thing that they would call the policy, which is just the network itself. It's just the AI itself, and it's basically what we know very well from an FSD kind of land is it's taking in sensor data, running through the neural network, and creating control outputs.
Right.
And it's doing this continuously to essentially meet the demand of the goal handed to it, right? And we would call that a goal embedding. And what that means is that this concept of embedding is sort of like the idea of the thing having like a bit of a resonant memory, if you
Mhm.
will, like keeping track of it in its brain. Like, well, this is what has to happen to meet the planner's goal that he set for me, and and then run through these things. Now, what's really interesting about it is what this means, and here's the sort of like, oh my God, we as the bunch of AI guys built this thing and still can't believe it does the thing we want it to do. Moment is that it means that it doesn't need to be taught skills at a very granular level. It can decompose them from larger skill chains. So if it, for example, is trained on video data of a human doing this action of making the glass full and delivering it, it can decompose those into smaller skill components. Like, for example, if you said to Optimus, I want you to fill 20 cups with ice and water and
Mhm.
put them back on the counter, it didn't need to be trained how to do that task discreetly. It can find that task within a broader training, uh, and therefore compose that training step without needing the entire thing trained out. Or
Okay, so
do that skill without necessarily breaking it into this like small minutia skill.
right. Okay, so back 3 years ago, Scott Wolter had been on my show. We were talking about the very rudimentary things that we knew about Optimus at that time. And one of the things he said is that you need to train the Optimus. The first level is you train it in 80 basic skill sets, like gross skill sets, grabbing versus pushing versus pulling
Mhm.
versus jumping so there'll be like these 80 skill sets that are kind of the base. And then now you start putting on top of that, but the machine has the memory, the training on those basic skill sets. So now you're making it more and more and more granular as you move up. Does that fit in with what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I mean it's clear, it's absolutely clear that you would train it on a series of base skills, and those base skills would get encoded into the neural network. So what we're talking about is taking this kind of stuff and encoding it into the network, but
Mhm.
it's encoded into the network holistically. That's the thing that has to be said here. And what I mean by that is there's not a little block in the corner called skill A,
Mhm.
okay? And there's not a little block over here called skill B. And the way to think about it, maybe from a human point of view, is imagine I told you to walk up the stairs. You are not necessarily accessing a piece of your brain that says, here's how you traverse a stair. Okay. And another piece of your brain that says, here's how you maintain balance.
Mhm.
And another piece of your brain that says, and here's how you maintain, I don't know, let's call it, uh, symmetry of your path or something. I don't, I made that up, but it's all happening sort of once encoded in your brain.
Mhm.
Now, clearly, there's a vision center. People have discovered this. It's understandable. But you got to think of this as like, even with these skills at these smaller levels and then broader skill chains demonstrated, it's been able to encode this deeply in the neural network
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm.
And therefore, the neural network is kind of uniform and big, and the bigger the better. See, this is another point that's important to understand about this, is that this sort of follows the scaling laws that we're used to, that we've been taught to. We talk about it as the bitter lesson and so forth, which says that if we can encode more and more, if we want to encode more and more into this brain, then we need more higher dimensional space. We need more associations, and
Mhm.
therefore we need a larger number of we need more layers and more parameters in that network. And what does that mean? Well, it means that if we want that to be 10x some size, it means that training is going to take longer to accomplish that. That having produced that neural network that then ends up on the bot itself or in the car for the case of FSD, now we've got a neural network that's much, much bigger. And if
Mhm.
it's much, much bigger, it means it takes more processing time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there's this desire to have a larger network, but at the same time, to have this inference state of 36 times a second, right? And both of these things are opposing goals, are opposing, they're pulling against each other.
Mhm.
So of course, Tesla spends a lot of time optimizing, but at some point, if you then said, okay, we've got this thing running at 36 times a second, this neural net, and now it's exploded to 10x, and we need to keep 36 times a second. Well, we better damn well have a lot of overhead in that processor.
Right.
Hence why the silicon's so important.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. And Optimus is sort of like FSD was sort of like the prototype for Optimus.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. It's while it's got its own high dimensional space, meaning the problem set is really, really large in driving.
Hmm.
The problem set for Optimus is much bigger.
Somebody, wasn't it Ark Invest where Egon agreed with them that it's, I think, 1,000 times harder to do
Well,
op
they actually said 200,000.
200,000 times. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right number or not, but
Right.
those guys are pretty smart.
Right.
Actually, that's not from Arc, is it? Isn't that
Yeah,
from
I think it was Ark. I think that was
is
Ark's
it Arc?
one of Ark's people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's either Arc or Tony's people, Tony Seba's people. Anyway, irrespective, the reality is that yeah, like FSD is sort of training wheels here for
Yeah.
what because in a sense, in a weird sense, think of it this way: one of the things that Optimus might need to do is drive a car.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
that means that, pretty much that entire network has to be there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's just the beginning. Then it needs to go in the house and make an omelet.
Yeah.
And then it needs to. So, the takeaway here is we've got this incredibly large, kind of generally uniform neural network that has encoded all these behaviors
Mhm.
within it in a way that's, a bit of a magic act. to be fair. I mean, it's a good way of it's a good takeaway, honestly. I mean, you can either think of it as the greatest word completer if you're thinking of LM, or Shakespeare on the other side.
Right.
And somewhere between is true, right? So so in a way, I think Optimus can be thought of the same way, as not just like encoded how to do a small little skill, but encoded how to do all these things and compose them and decompose them. I mean, we're using these words sort of to Scott's point of, you get these skills and you can build them up into a chain of skills that deliver through an action that the planner wants to have happen, a goal that it sets.
Right.
Right. On the other hand, you can have a pretty well-trained skill, and the thing knows how, it's just sort of naturally knows how to decompose it into the smaller skills that would be necessary. Now, that is not to say that all skills are available to it and that it isn't to be trained further. And a very large open question, and one we will not deal with today at all, is how do you train the thing? And I can tell you, a couple key concepts here is, well, first off, I can tell you, I don't know. Like, I don't know what Tesla will do to enable you to train your Optimus to do things the way you want. I suspect that it will be a combination. I suspect it'll be a lot more preference oriented than anything. Meaning, you're saying, when you get ice water, fill it only 3/4 of the cup. That's more of a preference, and yet you can, if you kind of step back, you can think, nah, that's just me training my Optimus to do it my way. Fair, that's fine. But is it changing the actual neural network itself? No, no. It's more about the context that's being injected, that the neural network is processing along with the sensor data to create the goal. So now the goal isn't just get me a glass of ice water. The goal includes, the planner knows that goal comes with the preference of 3/4 full.
Yeah, just like we in our prompts on LLMs, we'll tell it that I don't want any M dashes.
Yeah, and so now how does it do it?
Yeah, right.
How it does it is there's a set of context preferences that every time you ask a question, those things get injected along with your question.
Right.
They're not somehow magically,
right.
While they're encoded to your account and they're held with your account, they kind of, that's why, that's how they build up a history. So if you ask a question, you ask a follow-on question, and so forth, within a session, all that data that you previously did is being refed through the per cycle.
Right.
Now, that's hard to believe, but it's true.
Yeah,
and so I think that's
crazy, and it's crazy in terms of what it uses in compute or in inference in order to be able to do that.
Yes. So I suspect that in some cases, Optimus is not going to show up on planet Earth on day one to know how to do open heart surgery.
Right.
It's not going to know how, like, it can't decompose that from generally some, it might know something about that. It may not be able to plug in a lamp into a light socket. It may understand how to pick up something, and it may kind of approximate that, but it may not really understand, I need to get this just right. I need to get this prong this way, that this is and so that's the part of the training I don't know about yet. I'll be fair, I don't know about, because that skills, if you train it on, say, sort of some video that something you're doing, here, watch me, and do it this way. Yeah. It's totally unclear how that's going to operate, because effectively that has to, at some level, it has to change the model itself, and Tesla will not let that happen, because then every Optimus will be start to develop its own, and it'll be completely impossible to then OTA a new model on. So not,
so it's got to be, like you say, it's got to be included in the set of optionalities that are there.
Yeah.
But again, if we use the LLM as the example, I can put a sample of my writings into the system and say, write an article using
This way.
yeah,
Yeah.
using my voice, my approach.
Yeah. And essentially you've just given it sort of a bag of preferences that comes along in the inference cycle that allows it. So I think a lot of that. So again, to kind of summarize, training Optimus is something I don't yet know completely about. This is why I called this article part one. So
Uh-huh.
I have plenty more to write as I learn, and as Tesla kind of lets us know. Uh, I know some basic things about training. I know a lot of them will be sort of like this box of preferences or things that will be injected. That three-quarters full is my preference for what I want the ice water to look like, or I want this beer, not this beer, out of the refrigerator, right? Phil always wants the IPA, whereas you know what I mean, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the other half of it is, I would believe that no, Tesla's not going to allow you to modify the model
Right.
because and the reason is because the model, when you modify a model and you modify the parameters in the model, you can't, other than knowing that you modified the parameters, you can't understand where they came from. There's
Mhm.
no,
Mhm.
it's not a symmetric. You can't back out the parameters to the inputs.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
inputs, in fact, in a way, it's a lossless. It's a lossy compression mechanism, right? In other words, if you take an LLM and you look at the thing, you put it in a box over here. You said, how many bytes is that? And somebody says, oh, it's a 50 gigabyte. Uh, well, if you printed all the source material that ever existed that went into that thing, it's way bigger than 50 gigabytes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay, it's a couple petabytes
yeah.
or terabytes or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Some number, yeah.
But the point is, it's been encoded in a way that preserves the relationships,
Hmm.
but it's also compression,
Hmm.
and it's a lossy compression.
Hmm.
So what that means is that function only goes one way. You
Right,
take the input data and you yield this LLM's model. Now you can't take the LLM's model and go back to the input data.
right, right.
And what that means in terms of this conversation is that you can't train it on some stuff and then figure out how to subtract that stuff so that Tesla can then retrain the model with the 50,000 micro trainings that happened across the planet and then aggregate those things together.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, Tesla can be uploading the things that you've done, the things that you've modified, and
Yes.
put that into their overall
Yes.
analysis. Yes.
Yes. And which brings up then yet another question on that, which is, you know, what what information am I giving
Oh,
to Optimus that's private and proprietary
right.
that so there's a lot here in that box. There's a
Yeah.
lot here, and to kind of gloss over it, like oh I know is wrong. So we'll just have to put a pin in that one.
Sure.
So now we've got two of the three,
Hmm. Hmm.
major exponential drivers of this product, and then let's hit the last one, which is the machine itself. This thing is intelligence physically expressed. Therefore, it's a machine of actuators and the ability to move itself and the ability to not just actuators for movement, but to understand its torque and speed, precision, keep balance, uh, these types of things. And then the issue about this machine, probably more than any, is its mass. It needs strength in its design to be able to both lift heavy objects and for durability. Um, but at the same time, it cannot simply add weight because every ounce of weight, every gram that's added to this product reduces its battery life. Battery life is basically it's going to go to the processor, so they've got to make the inference side of this thing as tight as possible, but still within their goal of how many inference cycles and so forth. And of course, building the silicon efficiently greatly helps that step. And then now they've got to basically be able to move these actuators, and there's just physics here, and you can do some math on it. And people have that are smarter than me on the robotics side. They tell you, how long this thing can do this kind of task. It obviously picking up a 1 pound weight is very different than picking up 10 pounds. 10
Right.
pounds requires more effort, and therefore more power. And so, a lot of stuff, like we've seen some recent patents, for example, that uh, we believe that Optimus will have about a 2.5 or so kilowatt hour battery. So to put that in perspective, a Tesla vehicle might have an 80 kilowatt hour battery.
Right.
That's a lot different.
Yeah.
And so, and yet it's got the same kind of brain, and it's got probably a lot more to process. So, yeah, but it doesn't have the mass to move that a vehicle does, right? Because a vehicle's got to use most of that battery is not to do inference; it's to move the car. Um, but this is really important. And so there was a recent patent where they talked about, much like Tesla vehicles over, I don't know exactly when, but at some point the battery pack itself became the structural floor of the car.
Right.
And that was a realization that they had, that they didn't need to completely separate the battery as kind of an injectable item. It became structurally part of the vehicle. And I think they're doing the same thing here based on a recent patent filing, that they're looking at the battery pack as being kind of the structural torso of the very product itself.
Yeah.
Not as if they built the entire thing skeleton and then said, okay, we're going to insert a battery. No, the battery is literally
Part
part
of
of
it.
the physical structure.
Yeah.
And that is a classic Elon,
First place.
subtract mantra, because he wants to remove other structural elements that could be handled by the battery pack itself.
Yeah. 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 Thereby reducing weight and also reducing complexity of parts, etc. Yes.
Mhm. And so on Elon's three-prong multiplier, he talks about that electromechanical dexterity as being, as it increases, as an exponential multiplier of the effectiveness of the product itself. Coupled with the silicon and the intelligence. Remember, he said all these things are exponential, and then you can
Yeah.
multiply them together, and that's kind of the output product here. And I think that what he's saying is, the more dexterity we put in, let's say, the hands,
Mhm.
the more tasking this thing can do. The more tasking the thing can do, the greater its productivity across a variety of fields, right? I mean, some of us, for example, some of us are good at moving stuff in warehouses, and some of us can be surgeons. And it's not just in the brain.
Right.
That's one of the elements here, but it's also the ability to, some surgeons, there's a kind of this dexterity in their very hands, right? Some people couldn't do that. And so if Optimus can do surgery and lift the very boxes,
Right. Right.
then, boom, right? Um, so third leg of the stool is the machine.
Yeah, and the machine is so complex. Again, how many times I had Scott Walter on, and we talk about, the various how many actuators it's going to take.
Yeah,
Well,
he knows this stuff.
that got changed a lot.
Yes,
So
yes,
originally we thought it was only going to take, I think, around 20 actuators, and now it's up to something like 20 in the hand
yeah,
or something. The hand-arm combination is like 20 actuators. So
yeah,
all kinds of complexity. And then on top of that complexity, we've got the electromechanical aspects of it. You talked about how long will it last, how long will the battery last?
right.
But then you got how long will
Durability.
product last,
Yeah,
and how well will it do in this environment or that environment, in terms of heat or cold,
right,
or wind, or who knows what else, dust,
right.
water would be a
Yep.
big one.
Water incursion is absolutely a massive. I
Right.
mean, like, for example, we do not expect that Optimus version 1 is going to be able to, you know,
Swim.
to do welding at 100 feet below,
Right.
welding on an oil rigs, at 250 feet. Probably not. The pressures and the water incursion and so forth would destroy the product.
But we really want it to be very effective on Mars.
Well, actually, all joking aside,
Yeah,
that
outside
that
of
is that is an example where the industrial design of the product and that attribute list, that specification, is so outside the envelope of what the Earth version has to be that there's a lot of consideration there.
yeah.
And by the way, that's a very interesting one because I feel as though there's been several discussions probably within Tesla about those kinds of conditions. There's no doubt that kind of discussion has occurred.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, there's probably been meetings between them and SpaceX because SpaceX has got a planning group that is looking at the Mars settlement problem and so forth, and they've looked at it deep, whereas the Tesla guys are just basically you know uh, mechanical engineering folks, and they're used to these attributes, but they're not necessarily used to the extreme. In
Right.
other words, they're used to basically understanding, durability, water, all that kind of stuff, dust, all that kind of stuff. But they're not necessarily looking at, what level, what temperature ranging, like if you had that thing on Mars literally open, I think it goes from something, minus X to plus X Fahrenheit per day, and that range is so outrageous that I'm sure most metals would just be destroyed in that process. So anyway, the point of this is that the more uh, the more the more electromechanical dexterity that can be put in something like the hands, the more utility it
Right,
has.
right,
So, for example, if you could just think of it this way, um, if version one had X, just some number X,
right. Mhm.
ability to utilize its hands with in terms of its dexterity number, and then version two had X times two, then all of a sudden version two of this product has greater utility across a whole different field of things. Like for example, maybe version two is the one that can do surgery, but version one never could, or
Yeah,
version two could play the piano, but version one cannot.
right.
So, so yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and those who follow this channel know that I think that it'll be the violin that'll be the true tell. The piano is hard, but the violin is harder. Okay,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
then we got the multiplying effect,
Yeah.
right?
So, I mean, we're basically we're saying is we're taking these three things, the silicon, the intelligence, and the machine itself, and we're bringing them together in a pretty stunning product. Now, having said that, guess what? We have to manufacture the impossible, right? So, we've got this whole thing about capability we've just discussed
Mhm.
and how Elon characterizes capability, but now we got to build the damn thing.
Yeah,
And the good news for people listening that love Tesla is that Tesla is in a unique position as a company that can build something like this,
right.
and most important, not lab scaling, but actual real
Mhm.
manufactured scaling. A mass production,
Right.
mass production. So we know that they're starting to that they look at as a pilot line in Fremont, uh, about a million unit. I've kind of seen that. So Fremont is there. Fremont is right next door to Palo Alto. So in other words, it's a good place. Fremont, California, if people don't know, is where Tesla's first factory is, and it's up the street from me about 25 minutes. And then Palo Alto is where all research is done. The Tesla AI team is, and that's separated from Fremont by 30 minutes without traffic. And so this is where they're doing the first pilot line production, where they think they could make, a million prototype units. But long term, they're either have broken ground or will soon break ground on their 8 million square feet facility in Austin, next to the factory that is dedicated for Optimus production. And what's really interesting about this discussion is it's not just about building big buildings that can build lots of products. It's a lot more than that. Manufacturing, the design for manufacturing element here, which is a whole discussion of its own, is that what Tesla is really good at and has matured this process is they really understand I mean, heck, they put manufacturing and product under the same head. They're all under Lars. And there's a reason for that because um, they don't see them as separable entities. A lot of companies will basically, I don't want to say it this uh, in this such a cavalier way, but the design will be done. They'll toss the product over the fence to manufacturing and say,
Right.
go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And manufacturing comes back and goes, "What are you talking about?"
yeah, exactly. And so I think what Tesla's very good at is really designing for manufacturing,
Yeah.
and really understanding that at a deep level. And they built this uh, knowledge, this muscle memory of how to do this process. Not just Elon's brain, but the entire organization is really at a level that almost no company on this earth is from a manufacturing, from design to manufacturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I do think that is the true moat here. Beyond, can another company build something with the same AI? Maybe their AI team at Tesla is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
can another team, you know, build a custom piece of silicon? Yeah, they could. I don't think they will be.
I feel like that's a huge moat. I think
It's a
custom silicon is a huge.
custom silicon as a program
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
huge moat.
Right.
As a one-off, you're going to do this thing, do it. You could have looked at hardware 3 like that, right?
Yeah.
But to start to think of it as a program, and then to start to think of it at scale. Remember, if we go back to the early part of the discussion, we talked about terafab.
Yeah.
So if somebody's very successful with the product, and then they can't make the number of chips
Right.
required for the product, then they're kind of SOL,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But I think this is really key here is that when you take those other 3 things and then you add on this manufacturing at scale and a culture that understands design to manufacturing,
Right.
you really have the opportunity. That's why I think at the beginning of this thing I said this is the first time you're going to bring intelligence. I don't remember the exact quote. It's such a good one. We'll go back. Yeah. But read it, I'll read the first one again here. Optimus marks the moment intelligence leaves the screen and enters the physical world. And then last part of that is at scale.
Scale.
And that's what the point is. If you do 50 of them, it doesn't really matter. It makes no impact in the world.
Right.
But if you do 50 million of them,
It impacts the world. Now,
yeah, it's a big impact.
all right. So I don't want
So,
to. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go
okay,
ahead.
well, we're done with the manufacturing stuff.
Yep. Sure.
Okay, last slide. This is it. This is my finish to the article. Elon mentioned this. I'll read his quote. I think he mentioned this at the last earnings call, if I'm right. He said, Optimus at scale is the infinite money glitch. If Optimus achieves 5 times the productivity of a person per year because it can operate 24/7, that's why I call it the infinite money glitch.
Right. Right.
And what he's basically saying is what this product does is it drives labor to zero.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and by the way, it collapses the distinction between blue collar and white collar work.
Right.
I mean, here we have a machine that is replicated across the fleet that is as capable as another machine.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is wasn't the blue collar and wasn't the white collar. They are the same.
Yeah.
They're the same person. So I do believe that this is the point of this. Is he's saying, look, if we can build this thing at scale, now we can effectively drive labor to zero effectively through, in other words, who wouldn't buy this product?
Yeah. Yeah.
And who wouldn't, it's not who wouldn't buy the product, who would even have the option of not buying the product.
Right. Right. Right.
That goes back to our if Walmart does it, Home Depot has to do it, or so forth. So I think that's what we get out of this product, and I think that's why we see such such opportunity for Tesla here.
Yeah, and there's another element which most people don't know about because they haven't been in a product development position, and that is when you drive labor to zero, it means a lot of products that couldn't be made before because nobody would have paid that much for them can now be made.
Right.
I've had so many products presented to me over my years in manufacturing.
Right.
So many people came in with products. I'm like, Well, if that was 9.99, it
Right,
would sell. But
right,
I'm looking at it right now, it would be
right.
25.99.
Yeah.
So there's a huge number of products that will be able to be brought
Well,
to reality.
absolutely. If you think of the economics, the elasticity of economics, those curves,
Yep.
right? You recognize that exactly. You drop a product by $1 in a
Right.
$25 segment, and you've opened the TAM up massively,
Right.
right? So now, to your point, if the product pushes that labor cost down 25% or some, and that can be taken directly off the top of the product, now you've got a product that can reach a greater audience,
Right.
and therefore, I think that's why Elon talks about this idea of abundance.
Abundance. Yeah.
Yeah, because what he's effectively saying is it's going to push the cost of products down, quite significantly across and services too, right? I mean, it's now like you want open heart surgery, you
Yeah.
want,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so and so surgery. It's not a couple $1,000s. Optimus might be able to come to your house and do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm
Listen,
not open heart surgery.
okay, I don't want to leave your segment, your what you put together. I don't want to leave it without just spending one more minute or two more minutes on the multiplier impact. Because basically what Elon was saying is all three of these components are moving at exponential speed.
Yep, yep,
But what's important to understand is that they also intersect.
yeah,
So if your intelligence is going up exponentially, then that impacts the mechanical side and what the mechanical side can do. And it impacts the inference side and what the chip needs to do. You got the chip that's coming in. If it has greater ability to process,
yeah. That's
okay.
Randy. That's why at the very end of this quote up here, the you have three exponentials, blah blah blah.
Right.
What was the next thing he said? He started talking about the von Neumann machine. What he
Oh,
means is that that's the idea that Optimus can build itself.
yeah. Yeah.
So if you're talking about, and you don't have to take that like literally seriously.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just you can just recognize what we're saying here is that you have this thing that multiplies on itself. These are these exponentials. This is what he's talking about. This is your point. And when you get those, uh, the productivity goes up to the point where the thing could make itself literally.
Right.
It could be. I mean, there was an announcement I think this morning that rumor has it that Tesla's sent out a note to factory employees in Fremont that uh, Optimus will be joining the line or something to the effect of it will be starting to work in manufacturing for testing the thing, and you can see that that's just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah. Just the
Just
beginning. Yeah.
the machine building the machine,
Yeah.
and it's so a lot of people would possibly say, well, why can't it be, or why shouldn't it be? Uh, why shouldn't this thing be a purpose built robot?
Right.
Where you have in the factories, and there's a place for
Mhm.
that, and
Mhm.
those things exist.
They won't go away.
And no, of course, and in fact, they'll get better
Mhm.
because Optimus wouldn't be utilized in all the segments of manufacturing, say Cybercab. That thing is largely going to be there's no human in the loop, therefore there's no Optimus necessary in the loop. That
Right.
thing is completely built by a bunch of robots that are not Optimus. But if you look at Optimus fitting into the human world and the number of tasks that we as humans, the entire world is constructed for us to do things.
Yeah.
At least the parts that we've constructed in
Yeah.
this world.
No,
Uh,
even the parts that God constructed are designed for humans.
in many ways, that is absolutely true, or at least that,
Right.
and and many of the other animals running around. But the point here is that Optimus being in humanoid form has there lies its exponential utility because it is in fact like every human. It's like one human with the skills of all human.
Right.
And there happens to be a series, I think, on is it HBO called Pluribus? Have you heard of
Oh, I've
this?
heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the hive mind idea. It's a different idea, but what it's saying, one of the manifestations of it is that this disease spread across the population such that they all became kind of
Right.
one.
Mhm.
And what it means is that any person in the corner is an airline pilot.
Right.
Pilot.
Right.
Any person over here that used to, maybe this person used to pick strawberries, but
Yeah.
they can do open heart surgery.
Right. Right. Right.
Optimus needs to be viewed that way because, in
Mhm.
fact, it would be viewed that way. In fact, when we finally get to the end point of how Tesla will train and retrain and roll out its updates, we're going to see that that's exactly what it does. Is a knowledge that's obtained in one is pushed across the fleet in record time and enables the fleet to suddenly do more capability within the physical limits of what it can do.
Right.
In other words, what its dexterity is at that moment in time. In other words, it may be true that a version X has more actuators and therefore
Mhm.
can do more things, or has more touch sensors and therefore can do more fun. But at a gross level, this product, much like our cars, will improve itself overnight by over-the-air updates.
All right.
So
Well, that's
there we
very
go.
cool. Very cool. I think that's a
Yeah.
very good synopsis. Hopefully, people will go back and read your entire article if they have the desire to dig in even a little bit deeper. And there we
Yeah.
go. The very first one of your Magic of Optimus series. We'll see. Maybe there'll be 9 of those as
I
well.
know. You know, Randy, I am so excited about this product. It
Oh,
is actually the reason that got excited about
yeah,
Tesla.
yeah.
I love that cars can drive
Right,
themselves, and I
right,
find that to be an incredibly difficult problem that
right.
Tesla has solved in a very unique and awesome way that we've discussed ad nauseum. Um, but Optimus is what that really caught my eye, and I think we have to recognize that this product cannot just show up out of thin air. It literally is all the learnings of the years that Tesla has manufactured automobiles, has
Mhm.
learned to do them at incredibly with great efficiency, reducing parts and having incredible margin structure for the product. All of that allows them to build, a very physical product at scale. And we talked about that in the manufacturing is impossible slide. But it's all the other things that have come along the way here, and that's why I said in the article, FSD was the prototype,
Yeah,
because I think, uh, and by the way, it to your point, it's sort of a bit of a feedback loop as well. Everybody else, I think we talked about this in a previous discussion, is everybody else out there doing anything close to or desiring to do anything close to autonomous driving certainly doesn't have a humanoid robot program,
right, right.
and therefore the what the AI team, to make this product work, the AI team is learning a lot of things, and a lot of those learnings go right back into FSD.
Right.
Okay, next version of FSD, they'll change. I guarantee, I could bet money on. I have.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I have. If people understand, but I guarantee, for example, the model architecture in FSD has changed and will change because this very product
Sure, sure.
exists.
100%.
Okay.
Phil Beisel, everybody should follow Phil. If you're not, you can't go read his article if you're not on X. So you need to follow him on X. You need to make sure that, do you have a subscriber thing or are you still just free 100%?
No, I have a subscriber, but I don't. I just sort of like, there's no.
No special stuff for the
You,
subscribers
you
yet?
you don't really need to subscribe to get
Okay.
anything, but
Yeah,
it's
sure,
nice if you do. It just kind of
sure,
gives me
sure.
um, lunch money. I kid. I don't do any of this for money. This is
I
not.
know, I
This
do.
is not. I'm not trying to get eyeballs for money. It's not my business. Um, but anyway, yeah, this article, of course, is on X. We can probably put a link somewhere to it. Yes.
Sure we can.
Yeah.
Send me a link real
I'll
quick.
send you a link. Uh, and it's fun because I have all the articles listed there, and you can go
Yeah.
through. I think I wrote We did a show on that. I think I did 27 articles last year or something.
27 articles.
Yeah, I'm super proud of this one, by the way. I literally think it's my best.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll encourage people to go do it. All right,
So,
Phil Beisel,
okay.
thank you as always for doing what you do and for coming on here
Thanks.
to help us understand better. And to all of you guys out there, it's been great talking to you.